I want to talk about two scenes, or actually two parts of what most editions call Act 4, Scene 4 of Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to do two videos. This is a scene that has some extremely affecting poetry, particularly Juliet's nurse's discovery of the apparently dead Juliet, which is wonderful. It has a bunch of scenes, short scenes about kind of preparation for the upcoming marriage that often get cut for time and also to reduce casting. This film, we don't need this severance. A scene that almost always cut, and a scene that is probably misunderstood. I'm going to go with this video is about the one that's misunderstood, one that poses enormous challenges to performers and directors because it's very hard to do as written. If I were going to make an argument based on simply the text of Romeo and Juliet, I would probably start here in Act 4, Scene 4, after the discovery of Juliet's apparently dead body, because this is a moment where what we think this play is about gets confused. We have the extremely affecting, first of all, we're coming off Act 4, Scene 3 with Juliet's last extended soliloquy, the wonderful speech where she works up her nerve to take the kind of ill-considered coma potion and put herself into a fake death. It's her kind of quasi-suicide speech. That's a wonderful piece of poetry and enormously affecting because if this is a play, as I would argue it is, about the characters, especially our young lead characters, having their language become more apparently realistic and affecting, creating more of an impression of authenticity. This is the speech where Juliet's impression of authenticity kind of peaks, where she's a scared 13-year-old girl alone with a dangerous drug trying to make a very scary decision. That's great. We have some banter as like the unwitting Capulet household goes about its wedding preparations, and then we have the extremely to me effective moment where the nurse comes in with her standard jokes about get your sleep now, you're not going to sleep so much in your wedding night, because the nurse even in a play with Mercutio, the nurse is the one who likes the sex jokes best and who never tires of sex jokes. Getting up and then gradually realizes that the girl is cold, that she's not getting up. That is actually very powerful in performance. Then the husband and wife come, the parents come in, Capulet's wife wonders, what's news is here? And the nurse starts out this sequence that I want to talk about with, oh, lamentable day. What is the matter? Look, look. Oh, heavy day. I want to point out that the nurse is using that language, oh, heavy day, oh, lamentable day, already at the beginning of this kind of section of the scene. Hello. Sorry, there's someone, I have a guest off camera who occasionally wants to gurgle at us. What happens here is that the Capulets and the nurse's language and eventually Paris's language in a play that's been about language evolving and getting more apparently authentic and realistic, these characters take a hard turn back, more rhetorical, more bombastic, more obviously patterned, more schoolbooky, more fakey. Here's Capulet's wife from line 70. Accursed, unhappy, wretched, hateful day. Most miserable hour that e'er time saw in lasting labor of his pilgrimage. But one poor and loving child, that one thing to rejoice and solace in, and cruel death hath catched it from my sight. Here is the nurse. O woe! O woeful day! Most lamentable day! Most woeful day that ever I did yet behold. O day, O day, O day, O hateful day! Never was seen so black a day as this. O woeful day, O woeful day! That is hard to sell. That is hard to make feel real. You will see performers on stage and in film struggle with this speech, all of them, because the language feels so false, so retrograde. It is very hard to not make it seem fake. It is very hard to sell these words as authentic feeling. You'll see them start to mutter very quickly, blah, 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 like, so that we don't hear the whole language. They're just kind of muttering it. We do the opposite of what the script, they do the opposite of what the script tells them to do, which is go all out into operatic, big, fakey mourning as if you're in a play that's already out of fashion by the time this was written. They sometimes overlap. Watch it. Watch it in the Baz Luhrmann movie. Watch it in the movie from the '60s with the Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. They start to speed this up. They start to not give it full value. They want to move back as quickly as possible. Partly because they're afraid of feeling fake, and also because they're desperately afraid that the audience will laugh. It is actually with that O'Day, 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 it is very, very easy to get a laugh with that speech of the nurses. If you do it, actually, if you do it the most obvious way, it will get a laugh. And nobody in the 20th or 21st century wants to do that. So there's an attempt in this speech, in this scene, by all of the actors, the nurse, Capulet, Lady Capulet, Paris when he comes in, to not make them laughable because God forbid we make these characters seem laughable in this moment of their grief. I would suggest to you that we open our minds and accept the possibility that this is what the script does want. Many critics have criticized this speech because it seems so like a step backwards, a falseness. The critics talk about how it alienates us from these characters and makes their grief seem fake, unrealistic. It takes away their sympathy from our sympathy from them at a moment when they're suffering. A moment when they're suffering, when we may actually be invited to laugh at them. I would argue that we should open ourselves to the possibility that this play invites us to laugh at these characters at the moment of their real grief. That's hard. That's difficult. That's not the Romeo and Juliet we expect. It is the Romeo and Juliet on the actual page. It is the play as written. That the fact that performance has to fight very, very hard against the most obvious way to play this suggests that the way we think of this play is maybe not the way Shakespeare and his audience thought of it. That the text itself here resists our standard interpretation. That however we're reading the rest of the play might be wrong if we can't fit this into us. This subscene into our picture. This is a moment, I would argue, where the characters step backwards, where they become falser, and where the play perhaps starts to enforce a hard division between the characters whose language is getting more flexible, more apparently realistic, more authentic seeming, and the people who seem mired in a kind of fake, overly rhetorical speechifying that makes us less inclined to believe in them. It's the flip side of what the play does for Romeo and Juliet, where it makes their language feel more authentic, so we tend to believe their emotions more. Here, the play actually makes the parents' emotions in this moment less believable. Why? It's very difficult, but it seems to be doing it. You can't actually cut this scene entirely. The other thing that happens in the performance, it gets reduced enormously, so there's not all that repetition. You fight the text itself by cutting parts away. But for plot reasons, you've got to do at least some of it. What happens later in Act 4, Scene 4 is something that I have never seen performed. That's a separate video.